All right, greetings. We are in the building.
Yeah.
Real Talk Forum.
Back
And
in
how are you, Mr. Carroll?
I'm doing all right. Y'all. Just doing that John Boy Island food truck, got the logo on there. Please check us out. And just putting in the work. What about you?
Really just trying to hustle right now. Got to hustle, man. The COVID thing finally got to me in terms, I'm sorry, that didn't sound right. I didn't come down with any COVID, but I'm talking about the economic side. A lot of things have changed. Contracts have been canceled, so I got to go out there and hustle a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But can't complain. I'm living. I'm feeling healthy. Some of you know I couldn't walk for a couple years, and the rehab is really going well. I'm running now.
Are you rehabilitated?
I don't think I'll ever fully be. I can always still feel things. I can feel an imbalance in my my core from the injury, but it's kind of like it kind of keeps me on pace to keep rehabbing, keep working out.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm just glad I don't have relapses. Where I'm going down.
Yeah. I hang out with this cat a lot. He's gone through some shit, y'all. Remember, we had to pull over on the side of the road a couple times because of the stuff that was going on with you. Now it's all, you strong as an ox right now. So
I don't know about that, buddy. I'm getting there.
Self-rehabilitation though is very inspiring.
Yeah. Okay, but today we're here to talk about I teach some writing classes, and recently the question, writing classes for Japanese high school students. I think all the students are high school students. They're trying to get into colleges, so they have to be able to write essays at a certain level, at a college level, an college academic level. Some of them are going to go overseas if the COVID thing calms down. But these are Japanese who are international minded, I guess you would say. Okay. So the essay they had to write last week was they had to choose an event in the 20th century that had the greatest influence. And it just says that. So the influence, is going to, pretty much be on Japanese people. So I noticed a trend. Well, first of all, what do you think that most of the students chose?
Between like what they want to do?
No, what do you think the biggest event in the 20th century was that had an influence on now? What created the biggest change?
COVID.
How about that?
Yeah.
In the 20th century.
Oh, in the 20th century. Yeah, the internet. Social media.
Okay, social media and the internet, all that stuff. What social media didn't start till the 21st century, I don't think. Right. Right, but 20th century. The internet started in the 20th century, and that change is big now. So a few students did chose that, and I think that for writing, it's good, and that's like low-hanging fruit because it's easy to come up with examples. But most of the students, Japanese students, 20th century, they chose World War II. They either World War II or the atomic bombing, or which is kind of both.
Okay.
Right, and out of all the students that chose that, all of them, one of the things they said that one of the pieces of evidence that they cited to show you the change was how now racism is over. And they were talking about, now, and they were black people, civil rights happened, and now black people and white people get paid the same wage.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
So I've graded the papers, but I haven't handed them back yet. So I haven't seen them to this week. They're having testing, so I don't see them. But I went and asked another student of mine, and she is a tax accountant in her mid-30s. And I asked her, I said, what do you think, or what do you think about the state of racism?
Mm.
And I was, and I was trying to see how much she thought alike with these students. And she said, long story short, she said the same thing.
Okay.
So
I think
she was
talking, people think that, yeah. Even black
she was speaking. Yeah, a lot of black people think that. Okay, so what do you think? Do you think racism is finished?
No.
Okay. Do you think racism, what degree, if we're going to talk about racism during the Jim Crow era, and now?
Okay.
Do you think it's the same? Is it greater? Is it less? What do you think?
I would say the outward violence on black people is less, or is at least less seen. Even though it goes down in prison and there's all the police shootings, I mean, it's like you have to constantly bring it up and show it. Where back in, before Jim Crow days, that was the law. It was like they're allowed to do it. I mean,
right. It was endorsed.
Complain? That'll definitely get your family murdered.
Right. So you think it's less now?
I think the outward violence is definitely less. Yeah.
Okay, the outward violence, but what about just racism? Because we know racism manifests in so many different ways.
Yeah, I would say it's less. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. For me, I don't think that it's any less. Just because I define racism as a system as opposed to people's feelings or emotions or anything. But that's neither here nor there. But even if you're over the line, if you say racism still exists, to Japanese, a lot of Japanese, they still are like, what are you talking about? Because, and you know what they do? They come right with Obama, President Obama.
Right.
What do you mean? He was a black president. He was up in there. So I had to think of a way to explain my, well, not even my side, but just a different side for her to see what racism was systemically. But I came up with an example. And I can tell you what the example is, but I wanted to see if someone was saying that to you, a Japanese person. Oh, and by the way, folks, this talk between Sterlyn and I hasn't been scripted. He didn't know what the topic was.
Right.
When it first came on, and we did this purposely because I wanted to just see what he was going to say. He has, almost just about as much experience with me as me teaching students. And so he's facing, basically the same types of students. So he's coming across this too, I would imagine. So if a Japanese person is saying that to you, like, what do you mean? Racism is, especially racism when in terms of black people in America. Let's just limit it to there. What do you mean? There's so many examples. Mike Jordan, Oprah Winfrey's, but specifically Obama, because that's everybody knows Obama. They love Obama, and they're saying what? He was a black president for 8 years.
Yeah.
How could there still be racism? You know what I mean? Like with that. So how can you explain Obama and there's still racism at the same time?
Okay, and you're asking me now, right?
Yeah,
yeah. Well, I usually when I talk to Japanese about it, I say I look at Obama like you would look at a American-born Japanese person. They're not. You wouldn't really consider them Japanese. Sure, they have Japanese blood. They look Japanese, but if a person born in America who was Japanese came over to Japan and became the prime minister of Japan, would you listen to him? So I don't see what that has anything to do with racism. I understand the outward appearance of it, to see a black man in office, but we're talking about it's just like, if we were in prison and the top warden, it was a black man now instead of a white man, I'm like, well, I'm still in a prison. I'm talking about outward racism of like not liking each other has no bearing to me at all. That doesn't bother me at all. But I do see that, if you looked at a sports game or something like that, and they wouldn't let a particular group of people in the game, and they're better, let's just say track
qualified.
Yeah, track and field. You and I looked at the fastest women or something like some Olympic game, and you remember how much they put the camera on the one white woman that was in the race? It was like 8 black women. It was just one white woman, and everybody knew her name. They were talking about her. It was like, well, what does she even have to do with it? And it's like, yeah, they're always trying to balance it out and keep themselves in the mix by using their privilege and their power.
Okay.
And in terms of that, to me, racism doesn't really is the same as it always has been.
Okay, hold up. Okay, wait a minute. Now, I think you might be losing a couple folks.
Yeah.
Going back to the example about what did you say? An American-born Japanese person, right? And if they came over, well, first of all, I doubt that person would ever be prime minister. But just if they came over and was like, "Yeah, I want to be prime minister," and they were talking to you, and you know what I'm saying? I mean, when I say you, the Japanese person, right? Like, how would it come off? But wait a minute, how does that relate to Obama? Because they're like, what are you talking about? Obama is a black man, right? You're talking about an American-born Japanese person. So a Japanese person, I think, is going to say, what do you mean? That person's not Japanese because they were born over in America, and they don't know anything about our culture and our customs.
Right.
You know, they would, you know, and then we're just going to assume that the person is fluent in Japanese. Let's just
right. And I would say this. I'll say exactly, and that's the same thing as Obama. He's never grown up around black people. You know, he was raised by his mother, who's white in Hawaii, and with rich politicians. He's been rich his whole life. It's
Indonesia
not experience. Yeah, Indonesia is not the black experience. So
okay,
yeah. Why even bring him up is basically what I'm saying. You know?
Right.
And how absurd would it be to talk about an American-born Japanese being prime minister in terms of Japanese people? You know, they're like, why are you even bringing him up? I'm like, well, why are you bringing up Obama? What does that have to do with anything?
Okay. That kind of brings them, because that's similar to what I said. But I had to say it in such small bits. And the example I used, because I'm looking at Obama. Oh, is Obama related to George Bush?
You know, I've heard a lot of things like that. I heard it's either George Bush or Cheney. I've heard enough of it where he's related to one of them too.
Okay. And we don't want to get into hearsay, and we don't have the facts on that. If you do know, please hit us up and tell us. But the point is, whether they're even blood related or not, they knew each other. They so yeah, more than knew each other. I mean, they knew each other. You know what I'm saying? Like, they grew up together. They're all in the same on the same team. You know, everybody wants to talk about race. Okay, we're not going to be racist here just because he's black. If he's with them, growing up with them, what's the difference? You want to separate him because of the color of his skin? That's racist. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't matter what you know, just because you wear the Yankee uniform. You know what I'm saying? If you're, when it's time to bat, if you're batting for the Dodger team, or I guess they're just poor, they can't afford uniforms. I'm not going to get caught up in that. I see which side of the team which side of the field you're playing on. You know what I'm saying? And we're not saying good or bad right now. We're just trying to make a distinction. So I told the lady, I said, if in fact Obama is on the side of white supremacy, you know what I'm saying? That even makes it even more, you know, of a polar opposite than even your example. So to hit home to the Japanese woman, I said, imagine if North Korea, because you know, Japanese and North Koreans, there's no you know, not a whole lot of love lost between those, you know, those countries just historically and up till now. But you know, I think most people know North Koreans are kind of seen as the enemy.
Right.
So I said, imagine if you know, you have all these kidnapped. There was a lot of kidnapping going both ways between North Korea and Japan. So there's been maybe like 10, 20 years ago, I remember it was a big thing. There was a lot of Japanese coming back from North Korea that had been kidnapped, had been there for that whole time, 40, 50 years, whatever. So imagine if one of those people had children in North Korea, right? Even if they were Japanese, two Japanese people, but they grew up in North Korea. You know what I'm saying? and then they came back to Japan. So kind of the same thing you're saying, but even have that stigma of North Korea on them.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And then
of a North Korean,
right. And they were talking to you about representing Japan, and how would you feel? Would you feel that they're Japanese? They have Japanese blood.
Right.
You know, they have Japanese blood. You know what I'm saying? But you know, do you think that they're Japanese? And you could see her looking funny. And I said the same thing. I said, with George Bush, he didn't yet. Barack Obama. I said prior to him, you know, becoming a candidate, nobody heard of him.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Maybe outside of that one black church he went to, you know what I'm saying? But you know, and so I was like, for black people, the way he talks, the way he moves, you know, he's not sounding like someone that's in your family as a black person.
Right.
Not saying he's bad. I'm not even talking about that. I'm just trying to make a distinction as to why me, forget everybody else, why me. I've never really acknowledged him in the same way that a lot of black people have. Again, I've never put a pitchfork in his hand or anything like that. I like, he looked good in his suits. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Shout out to the Obama family. We're not trying to, you know, hate or throw shade on them.
Right.
But I was just trying to make a distinction.
President to me,
Yeah. So just here to say that in the 21st century, just like the 20th century, the system of racism, white supremacy is still alive and well.
Yes.
And that's really what I wanted to speak about.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. And also just the level of equal playing field is just where I think Japanese don't get it, because they have their own people who have their own society, their own country. They don't understand the level of oppression that black people in the States would go through, you would say.
Right.
Because, you know, I'm not really talking about a state of warring. I'm talking about just a level playing field. You know, how many qualifications do you think Obama has? I'm sure he probably has more than damn near half of the presidents who have been president. Damn sure more than Reagan, Nixon, and definitely more than Trump. How hard he'd have to even get to be that level of a president. How much work it would take, where you got a guy like Trump who has no qualifications at all, can just roll up in there. Would people accept it if we just had a black guy who black people liked and thought was cool? He just rolled up and became president. You know what I'm saying? Nobody would accept that. You know, it's not level. White people are always accepted as the norm.
And the segue in kind of what you said earlier, when you were talking about the prison guard example. Mm-hmm. I think I remember when I was smaller, when I was younger, when, you know, in the streets, you know, in Philly, mm-hmm. Jersey, like, you know, you started noticing this trend of the black cop and the white cop. Mm-hmm. And many times the white cop would be nicer to you than the black cop.
Yeah.
But everybody knows the good cop, bad cop thing. Mm-hmm. Right. So when that became popular, it was a little bit easier to see. But I remember a black man said it to me, because there was a little boy. I worked in a facility with adolescent kids, you know, trying to raise adolescent kids. Their parents were usually incarcerated or on drugs. They were incapacitated. And he said that. He was from Trenton, New Jersey. I'll never forget it. My boy Anthony, shout out to him. And he was like, yeah, you know, white cops are nicer than black cops. Or I don't know if he said, or black cops are meaner than white cops. He said one of the two. And I remember I was like, I felt like panic, because I was like, I can't just let that go. But how do I explain it to him? I can't just disagree with him without any evidence. Mm-hmm. But there was an older black man there named Elijah. Shout out to him. And he schooled me on a lot of things, you know, and he came up, he happened to be walking past right at that time. And he said, you know, it doesn't matter what color the face of white supremacy is. Mm-hmm. Or, you know, something to that effect. And I took it from there. Mm-hmm. When he said it, it boomed me. I was like, that's it. I was like, yo, because you know, they're both under this same system. The system is what is designed. The system is what is attacking you as a young black man on the street. Mm. And the policeman or whoever they are, though, that's just the faith, the messenger. coming to let you know that you're not equal, and we're going to beat you down. We're going to marginalize you.
Yeah.
And just because you hire someone that has a black face and emphasis on blackface, if you don't know what that is, look that up on Google that, blackface.
Yeah.
So the whole history is so it doesn't matter, what you're wearing on the outside. What are you on the inside? What are you on the inside? So if you're not standing for black values, black spirituality, black, then we have to associate you with something else. Might not be necessarily bad or good, but again, it's important to make the distinction.
It's a general word, like racism is a general word, and for people, especially live in Japan or some other country like that, where it's like a homogeneous, if that's the word.
Yeah. Homogeneous,
where it's just one people. The word racism just means one group hates the other and then just try to kill the other group, but it's just not that.
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
But again, and I'm glad you said that. And I like I said, for me, let me just say that. And according to Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, check out her book, The ISIS Papers. That's what she makes the distinction, because I think a lot of people tend to confuse bigotry and racism. Racism is a system. Bigotry is you coming off your emotions or your ignorance.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And so when we don't like those people and we're going to kill you, we want to kill them, just us. You might be the smaller group, or you might not be, but if it's not an entire system that is conspiring to do this with you, it doesn't qualify to me. And what I've read from Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, Dr. Joy DeGruy, amongst others, that doesn't qualify. You know what I'm saying? Like when I was growing up, brothers used to beat up on white dudes. You know what I'm saying? I write that in Guy Coaching the Story. There was a moment. It was a moment where it was after Roots came out, from the backlash from Roots. Brothers were like, "What? We were getting whipped by these dudes," and for the next couple years, really, until crack came out. I remember one teacher said, and I wrote that in the book. He was like, "That was the safest time in American history for Black people." Right after Roots came out, because of such a backlash, everybody what was politically correct, and and all this stuff. Why am I talking about that?
Just based on racism versus bigotry.
Because at that time we were a minority. We were a minority in the town, but we were brothers. Brothers were sticking together. I'm not saying violence is something positive. I'm just telling you what happened. But that does not in the paper they would say that's racist, but it's not racism. Why? Because the brothers, they're going to get arrested for that. They're going to get punished. See, when it's racism, you beat those guys up, and then you get a pat on. You what is it? A smack. That you don't get any real trouble.
Oh, okay. You get a slap on the wrist.
Slap on the wrist, yeah.
Yeah.
You get a slap on at most. At most, but you might get a medal. You know what I mean? You might get an accommodation, and even if you don't, in the circles behind the scenes, they're bigging you up. You know what I'm saying? That's like, who's the one white guy that killed all those Black people, and the police took him to get something to eat before they took him to jail?
Just recently?
Nah, it was a couple years ago. It was,
not Zimmerman.
Yeah, I can't remember who it was, but it was a guy, and he killed a whole bunch of Black people. And the police, when they arrested, they didn't beat him up. They took him to McDonald's or Burger King or somewhere, because that's what he wanted before they, because what are they saying? They're like, good job.
Damn.
We can't. That's an example of the system. It's a system.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Where I'm not bigging up in bigotry, but again, I guess this is the theme. A distinction needs to be made.
Shout out to that insurrection, that insurrection, how all those white people ran up on the Capitol. If it was a group of Arabs or if it was a group of Black people, it wouldn't even they wouldn't even get to the front door.
Man, they would have pulled out the automatic rifles.
You know what I'm saying? And wasn't it like just one Black dude who out of all of them who got arrested, he's still in jail, and everybody else who got arrested, they're all out of jail?
No, I don't know that, but that is, oh my goodness. You would think that they would just let him out just to make it look good. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, but again, there's a distinction. I mean, again, bigotry is on the ignorant side of the game, no doubt about it. You know what I'm saying? But just because one person, I don't like, I don't want to even say a certain group. You know what I'm saying? And people will say it's racist, and I'm not gonna go around and get on Facebook. That, you know, the semantics. I'm not gonna do all of that.
Right.
But when we're, you know, when we're trying to have an intellectual conversation, it's important that we define these terms correctly. You know, or at least so that we can communicate. Because if you're talking about bigotry, and you're conflating with what I'm saying is a system, how are we going to be able to communicate when we have two different terms, two different definitions for the same term? You know what I'm saying? That in itself is not going to be helpful. You know, we're not going to be able to build anything.
That's true. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, the ISIS papers of Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, it's come from Dr. Neely Fuller's work. Give credit where credit's due. But they break down the 8 or 9 areas of people activity. And actually, I made a shirt, an Afro-Asiatic shirt. We had the same thing. I called it the B system back then. Yeah. But it's like economics, religion, sex, the courts. I can't remember all of it, but you get the picture. Right. You can look this up right up on Wikipedia. Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, the ISIS papers, any of that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm through. That's all I needed to say. I wanted to get that off.
There's of the air to me. Just remember, you don't. You're getting your information from the same people that we're saying are the problem. So just remember that. You know, I wouldn't talk about another group of people if I didn't hear it from their mouths. You know what I'm saying? So when Japanese tell me the problem with Korea or South or North, or when they talk about China, I'm not gonna just start going to Japanese like, well, why don't y'all all come to? You're all Asian. I mean, like what's the problem? You got your country, they got theirs, and everybody should just come together. You know, like everybody come together. Like, how silly does that sound? So how silly would it sound for Black people who've been oppressed by white people this whole time to just come together in coalitions and all that? Like, just think about that.
I mean, I mean, that's why the reparations thing is on the table now. It's just like, if I come to if I come to your house and steal something from you, and then later I apologize, but I don't give it back. You know what I'm saying? But I'm like, yo, how come you don't invite me to your house anymore?
Yeah.
And I'm acting like you're the bad guy.
Yeah.
You're the bad guy, and that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
No, I mean, because when you really apologize, it's something that's deep. You know what I'm saying? It's something, it's not just words or just wordplay. I mean, you have to, you have to do something.
You're gonna have to make it right. You're not trying to make it right, then you're not,
Yeah, what's the word? Good Lord. It's a biblical word. It's words using the Bible. Redemption. Redeem yourself.
Okay, yeah.
Your redemption. You know what I'm saying? You have to redeem yourself. You can't just, that's it. You know what I mean? So yeah. So right as it is right now, we know that the dominant society. We could go deep, but just say they've stolen land. They've stolen these things. They put us in the worst situation possible, and now they want to say, hey, let's just forget it, and we're going to keep everything, and you guys are going to still live like this.
Right.
And you're supposed to just be okay with it. You know what I'm saying? What is the wealth gap that Zoe Williams, shout out to him, always talks about? Like Black people have like 3% of the wealth or something like that.
Pretty low, yeah.
And this is including the Oprah Winfrey's, the Michael Jordans, all these people that they put in front of you, the Tiger Woods.
Right.
But they put in front of your face. But even with all of that, we're still below 5% of the entire wealth.
And the money that they're making is off of us.
Right. And just talk about the slave trade. Yeah. Everything that they made was off our backs, and they're continuing to make now.
Right.
Look at hip hop. How can we know who gets paid for hip hop?
Man, if we controlled Jewish music, like if we could get a label where we just start getting like who controls all of this? Like how silly is it just to even say that even nowadays that all the labels are still controlled by, not all of them, but the majority of labels are still owned by white people who had they didn't play any of the music. It is okay, but we're gonna end that here. I think we made our point.
We want to try to keep these short, keep people's attention spans. We know how people are. You got a lot of competing broadcasts and podcasts and television shows. Thank you for joining us. We're going to be coming back with some more material, so please stay tuned.
Bet.
Where can they holler at you at?
realtalkenglish.jp. You know where to find me. You.
Okay. Taquan Amaru at Gmail. And I'm on Facebook, and I just started an Instagram page. There's nothing really on it yet, just because everybody's telling me I have to. And please be on the lookout. Modern, that was the old title. Yeah. 21st Japan Decoded. 21st Century Japan Decoded. You might have to edit that. 21st Century Japan Decoded. It's the only guide for Black people in Japan. I'm going to say it again. That's the subtitle. The only guide for Black people in Japan. And it's coming from a mental health perspective. So we're trying to talk about issues as more Black people are living here for longer periods of time, settling down, career opportunities. What is the mental health side of the game? We know that Japanese are suffering from, like Sterlyn mentioned, hikikomori, like being a recluse, suicide rate, et cetera, et cetera. How is this going to affect Black people, or is it affecting Black people now already? What are the signs and symptoms? How can you get past it? 21st Century Japan Decoded. Support Black books, support Japanese, Black, Japanese, all of it.
Yes, sir.
Support.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. All right, we out.
All right, y'all. Peace.